Used outboard prices are dropping in a way that does not feel seasonal. Clean, big horsepower engines are getting listed, like sellers cannot afford to keep them another week. That is the event. A dumping wave driven by pressure, not generosity. The stakes are simple. Cheap can mean opportunity, or it can mean hidden risk that turns into a 5-figure repair. So today you will learn who is forcing the sell-off and how to shop it safely. The flood that looks like a miracle deal. It starts with the scroll. The listings never end. You see engines that should have been hard to find a couple of seasons ago, now stacked in rows, photographed in driveways, or sitting on pallets with handwritten notes taped to the cowling. The first thought is simple. The market finally relaxed. The second thought is more honest. Why would anyone sell this cheap? What you are looking at is not a normal discount cycle. A normal discount looks like a few price drops, some negotiating, and then the clean engines disappear. This feels different because the supply does not look like it is trickling. It looks like it is arriving in waves, and waves have a source. There is also a psychological trick happening. When you see 10 similar listings, you assume the engines are common. When you see 50, you assume something is wrong with the product itself. But used markets do not always reflect quality. They reflect urgency. And right now, urgency is everywhere. Part of that urgency is simple math. Machines are heavy, awkward, and expensive to store. They need space. They need insurance. They rust, seize, and age even when they are not running. A used outboard is not a collectible that sits quietly. It is a liability that demands attention. So when someone decides to sell, the clock starts ticking. Another part of the urgency is reputation. Some engines carry stories that follow them like a shadow. A single bad season can become every one of those fails, even when the reality is more mixed. And the second, the buyer community starts whispering, sellers start discounting, because no one wants to be the last person holding an engine. The internet has decided is risky. You can feel it in the language too. Must sell. No time wasters. Selling for a friend. Price is firm until tomorrow. When a market turns, people stop selling because they want to. They sell because they have to. And that is how you get the first hint that something bigger is going on behind these listings, something that has nothing to do with the engine's paint. The cost to hold became the real enemy. The pressure does not begin with the buyer. It begins with the person who cannot afford to keep the engine where it is sitting. That can be a private owner, but it is often someone managing many engines at once, with bills that do not care whether it is a good boating year. What most viewers never see is the financing behind inventory. A dealership does not always pay cash for every motor sitting on the lot. Often, engines are financed, and the financing has rules. When money gets expensive, the carrying cost rises. When sales slow, the time to sell stretches out. That is where the trap forms. The longer an engine sits, the more it costs to sit. Once that happens, the goal changes. The goal is no longer to make the perfect margin. The goal is to stop the bleeding. That is when you see wholesale dumping, quick trades, as-is pallets, and sudden price cuts that do not match the old book values. From the outside, it looks like charity. From the inside, it is triage. And it is not only dealers. Lenders have their own version of triage. When loans go sideways, the priority becomes recovery, not retail. Repossessed engines do not come with sentimental value. They come with a stopwatch. The faster cash comes back, the better the balance sheet looks. That creates a pipeline where engines move from customer to lender to auction to reseller to online listing, often with fewer details, each time. Here is where things get messy for buyers. The further an outboard travels down that pipeline, the thinner the story becomes. You might still get a clean-looking engine, but you may not get the full context. What fuel it drank, what water it lived in, how it was stored, what warnings it threw, who touched the wiring, or why it was removed in the first place. This is why the word pennies is so seductive and so dangerous. The discount is real, but it is not free. Someone is paying the cost of uncertainty. The seller is trying to pass that cost to the next person, and the market decides how much that uncertainty is worth. For big horsepower engines, the stakes multiply. The higher the horsepower, the more complex the rigging tends to be. The more complex the rigging, the more expensive the surprises. One surprise can turn a good deal into a bill that feels like it belongs on a new engine instead. So the market discounts even the good ones, just to be safe. the repower. Boom left a long shadow. A few years ago, the demand felt endless. People who had been thinking about repowering suddenly acted like it was now or never. New boats came with long wait lists. Dealers built pipelines. Owners paid premiums just to lock in an engine slot. It was a season where horsepower felt like scarcity. If you remember the rush around 2021 and 2022, it was not only about engines, it was about time. People were buying certainty, even if it cost more. That surge pulled a lot of future demand forward. And it also created a quiet side effect. Every repower produced a removed engine. Some of those motors were tired, many were not. They were pulled because owners wanted newer technology, different performance, better fuel economy, or simply the peace of mind of a fresh warranty. So the used pipeline filled in the background, engine by engine, pallet by pallet. At first, it was manageable. Demand kept absorbing it. Then the pace cooled. It did not have to collapse. It only had to slow down a little, because supply was already waiting. And when buyers started hesitating, the pile started growing faster than anyone wanted to admit. This is the hangover phase. It is where the market discovers that the previous rush already satisfied a lot of buyers. People who repowered then are not repowering now. They already spent the money. They already scratched the itch. So the used market becomes the place where extra engines go to find a new home. There is a quality mismatch hiding inside the glut. Sometimes the first wave is the stuff people are least confident in. The second wave is the stuff they delayed selling because they hoped the price would rebound by 2024 or 2025. That means the market can get uglier before it gets cleaner, even if the wider economy improves, because the backlog still has to clear. And that clearing process rarely looks polite. It looks like bulk sales. It looks like trade-ins that get flipped immediately. It looks like private owners dropping prices because they see 10 similar engines listed and they want to be the one that sells this weekend. Before we go deeper, I want to know this. What is the cheapest too good to be true outboard you have seen recently? And did it sell? Put it in the comments. Hit like if you are shopping right now and this helps you read the market. And subscribe, because next we connect the dump to the one thing that decides everything, the engine's story and what happens when that story is missing. Risk is what gets discounted, not just metal. A used outboard can look perfect and still be a problem. The cowling can shine, the paint can be clean, the skeg can be sharp. None of that proves what matters under load, at temperature with the fuel system hot and the engine living the way it lives offshore. This is where modern engines create both confidence and fear. Many run beautifully for thousands of hours, but when something does go sideways, the path from tiny symptom to big invoice can be short. A sensor reading slightly wrong can trigger protective behavior. A connector that got wet too many times can cause intermittent faults. A harness with hidden corrosion can turn a simple day into a diagnosis chase. That does not mean modern engines are fragile. It means the cost of uncertainty is high. When something is expensive to diagnose and expensive to fix, the market reacts by discounting anything it cannot verify. This is why big horsepower motors create drama. A 200 to 300 horsepower outboard is not just an engine, it is a system, often tied to advanced controls, integrated steering options, and electronics, that may require dealership-level tools to read properly. When everything is healthy, it feels effortless. When something is wrong, it can feel like you bought a puzzle with missing pieces. This is also where the pennies illusion gets dangerous. A low purchase price can hide a high ownership cost. Buyers sometimes save $5,000 on the purchase and then spend $5,000 again trying to chase a problem that only shows up on the water. Owners report issues that do not appear on a hose run because a driveway start does not load the engine, does not soak the systems the same way, and does not recreate the real conditions. Service history becomes the dividing line. A used engine with clean records can still sell strongly, even in a weak market, because the buyer is purchasing proof. The same model with missing paperwork gets punished, not because it is guaranteed to fail, but because no one wants to be the person holding the unknown. You will hear sellers say, "It ran when removed." That sentence is not proof. It is a mood. It tells you the engine is not a pile of parts, but it does not tell you what it does after an hour of running. with a heavy prop, with real fuel demand. The market knows the difference, and the market prices the difference. The three dumpers and the quiet deal behind the deal. There are three main forces pushing engines into the used market at the same time. You can think of them as three different kinds of sellers with three different kinds of fear. And when those fears overlap, prices fall faster than anyone expects. The first is the dealer. When the lot is full and the bills are due, space becomes the most valuable thing. A used trade that might have sat for months in calmer years suddenly becomes something to move immediately. That is why you see fresh takeoffs and trade in special listings that feel almost too aggressive. Sometimes it is not even about profit. It is about clearing the deck. The second is the lender. Repossessions do not come with stories that help buyers. They come with balances. Engines move fast, and the paperwork rarely gets better as it moves. When those engines land in the resale chain, they often come with the bare minimum, a model, a rough hour count if you are lucky, and a promise that it existed yesterday. The third is the owner. Private owners dump for different reasons. They upgraded, they sold the boat, they lost storage, they got spooked by a repair estimate, or they simply do not want to keep paying on something they cannot enjoy. Sometimes it is financial stress. Sometimes it is emotional exhaustion. A lot of people can handle an expensive hobby until the hobby starts surprising them. Now here is the quiet deal behind the deal. When sellers are stressed, they trade certainty for speed. They would rather take less today than gamble on more later. That is how pennies begins. But that does not mean every cheap engine is bad. It means the seller's timeline is not your friend. A rushed seller will not always give you the details you need, either because they do not have them or because they do not want to slow the sale down. This is where you see the market split into two worlds. In one world, clean history engines hold value because buyers trust them. In the other world, unknown history engines get liquidated because buyers refuse to be the test pilot. The gap between those worlds is growing, and that gap is the story. Big outboards amplify it. With big horsepower, buyers are not only buying performance, they are buying peace of mind. If the engine has a reputation for expensive surprises, the discount gets bigger. If the engine has a reputation for being boring and dependable, it gets punished less. Sometimes that reputation is fair, sometimes it is just louder. The mid-twist, where small outboards become the insider move. Most people think the chaos is everywhere. It is not. In the middle of this dumping wave, there is a class of engines that can behave like the market never changed. It is not glamorous. It does not dominate transoms on offshore hulls, but it quietly proves a point. Not all horsepower is priced the same, because not all risk is the same. Small outboards, especially the ones used as kickers and utility motors, often live simpler lives. They troll. They push small skiffs. They serve as backups. That simplicity can turn into stability in the used market, because the failure consequences are smaller and the systems are less complex. Here is the part that surprises people. In a dumping market, a small engine with a clean story can feel more valuable than a big engine with an uncertain story. Not because it is better, but because it is easier to trust. You will hear mechanics and dealers say something like, "Everybody wants a good kicker." They do not always say it loudly, because it is not the headline engine, but it is the engine that solves real problems. If your main motor acts up, a small kicker is what gets you home. If you fish slow, it is what makes your day work. If you run remote water, it is what lets you sleep at night. This is why small outboards perform best when they are framed as the underdog winner. They are the engines no one flexes online, but everyone quietly tries to find when the season is close and their backup plan looks weak. And this twist also reveals something about the dumping wave. If buyers are still willing to pay for certain small engines, it means the market is not simply collapsing, it is repricing. It is deciding what kind of risk it wants to carry. So when you see big horsepower engines getting hammered, while certain small engines stay firm, it is the market telling you a story. Complexity is being punished, uncertainty is being punished, and verified simplicity is being rewarded. How to buy in a dump without becoming someone else's escape plan. A dumping market can be the best time to buy, but only if you refuse to buy blind. The mistake most people make is treating a low price like proof. A low price is not proof. It is a signal. It says something about this engine, this seller, or this moment is pushing the price down. Your job is to find out what that something is. Start with the story, not the shine. Ask how it was used. Ask what it pushed. Ask how it was stored. Ask why it came off. Ask who serviced it. You are not interrogating a stranger for fun. You are trying to locate the risk. A seller who can answer calmly and specifically is a different situation than a seller who dodges, rushes, and keeps repeating, "It ran when removed." Then, move to what matters under load. Compression consistency remains a classic truth for a reason. Gear case condition is another. Wiring condition, connector corrosion, and rigging cleanliness matter more than a polished cowling. If the engine is modern, ask how faults were checked, and whether the seller can show diagnostic reports. If that cannot happen, treat the price as if you might be adopting a mystery. Also, be honest about your own support network. A used engine is not just a purchase. It is a relationship with whoever will service it. If the nearest competent shop is far, if parts are slow, if the local dealer is overloaded, your risk is higher even if the engine is fine. This is the part buyers forget, because it does not show up in the advertisement photos. Now, the biggest trap in a dump is speed. Sellers under pressure want fast buyers. Fast buyers get sloppy. Sloppy buyers become the next desperate sellers when something goes wrong. That is how the market keeps feeding itself. It is not evil, it is just a loop. Here is a grounded rule that saves a lot of people. If you cannot verify the hours, the service history, and the underload behavior, do not pay a price that assumes you can. Pay a price that assumes you might be taking on a project. If the seller hates that, it tells you something. And there is a final layer that we should talk about carefully. If financing stays tight and storage stays expensive, dumping waves can keep coming in bursts. They might not be constant, but they can hit. When lots get cleared, when lenders push inventory, and when owners who waited finally give up. The result is a market where prices can feel calm one month and chaotic the next. That is why some of the smartest buyers are not trying to time the bottom. They are trying to buy certainty at a discount. They pay a little more for an engine with proof, because proof is what the market is really selling right now. If you remember nothing else, remember this. In a dumping market, the best deal is not the cheapest engine. It is the engine with the cleanest story at a price that respects reality. What comes after the dump and who wins. Markets rarely move in one clean motion. They breathe, pause, then surge again. That is why this used outboard dump can feel inconsistent. One week buyers brag about steals, and the next week the same model sells for a normal number, because the right buyer trusted the right paperwork. What happens next is usually sorting. The lowest trust engines keep circulating, bouncing from listing to listing, getting cheaper each time. The higher trust engines get bought quickly and disappear, which makes the market look worse than it really is, because the engines still visible are often the ones nobody wanted at full price. In the background, two forces decide how long dumping lasts. The first is how expensive it remains to hold inventory. If carrying costs stay high, more engines will be pushed into the used channel quickly. If carrying costs ease, sellers can afford to wait, and waiting is how prices stabilize. The second force is confidence. When boaters feel uncertain, they delay purchases. When they delay, sellers drop prices. When prices drop, careful buyers return, but they return with rules, proof, service history, and support. A technology layer can quietly widen the split. As 2026 and 2027 approach, more buyers ask different questions. Not only does it run, but who can service it? How long will parts stay available? And what happens if a control module fails? Those are not paranoid questions. They are normal questions in a world where electronics can be the difference between a simple fix and a long wait. Support matters more than people admit. Some shops have technicians who know a platform deeply, while others are learning as they go. Some dealers can diagnose fast, others need time. None of that shows up in an advertisement, but it changes what an engine is worth to you personally. So, who wins after a dump? The buyers who buy proof, the sellers who can document, the engines that have reputations for being serviceable, not just powerful. Who loses? The people who buy a discount and assume it means safe. If you want to watch the market like an insider, watch the listings. When sellers start adding service receipts and diagnostic screenshots, buyers are demanding proof. When listings shrink to as is, dumping is accelerating. And when you see the same engine reposted again and again with small cuts, the market is telling you that uncertainty is still winning. The dump ends the way most dumps end, not with a headline, but with exhaustion. The backlog clears. The worst engines find project buyers. The good engines find careful owners. and the market settles into a new normal that will look obvious only after it happens. Another signal is bulk liquidation. When many engines in the same horsepower range appear at once, it usually means a fleet is unwinding, not a sudden defect. At least not yet. If the used outboard market feels like it's being dumped for pennies, it's because many sellers are trying to escape the same pressures at the same time. Some listings are real opportunities. Others are someone else's uncertainty, shrink-wrapped and priced to move. If you're watching and unsure whether to jump or wait, tell me what you're seeing where you live and what horsepower range you're shopping. Subscribe if you want the next deep dive model by model on which engines get punished first and which hold value when the market gets loud.